is to love, and essentially a community that embraces imperfection. Because I think perfection is so overrated, and I say that as kind of a recovering perfectionist because I really studied for motherhood like I was going to be this A+ mom, like I was saying earlier. And a lot of that has stemmed from kind of like what I felt like as a child with, like I was saying with Gigi, our parents have the best, I feel like for the most part, parents have the good intentions and they're doing the tools that, using the tools that they have. But I also kind of knew that I wanted to do something different. Like I worked in pediatrics. I studied because I remember how I felt when I got yelled at. I remember how it felt like an infection in our household with frustration and anger. And it wasn't like a bacteria or virus. It was truly like infected with frustration. And that's so contagious. It's so, and sometimes we don't even know we're spreading it to other people, but it not only can spread to other people, it can spread across generations. And I think throughout my motherhood journey, I have learned that I didn't realize I was also infected. So that's a big part of why I really started this all along. But then once my baby once my baby was born, she was taken to the NICU. And that was really the start of, wow, I don't have control. And I think there were other times in my life that I discovered that, but it really wasn't like thrown into my face as much as it was during that moment of, I did not study for this. And what do I do now? And it took a lot of writing, it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of therapy. But what I discovered, and I was saying earlier on, was this whole concept of the verb mother to mom versus the title. Because when we think of ourselves as the title of mom or mother, or this is who I am, or providers will say, Mom, do you need this? Or Mom, can you hold your baby down to give them a shot? Or, something like that. I just remember that like in the NICU, that would sometimes happen. Or draw blood or whatever it was. It was just kind of like, oh my gosh, no one is calling me by my name anymore. And which is fine. I don't mind it. But also at the same time, it's not like I lost my identity. At least I felt like. But then again, maybe I did. I don't know. I kind of like just felt different. Almost like you fill out a birth certificate for your baby and it's so carefully filled out, but you don't necessarily have one for you, like, but society essentially filled it out for you and your mom, and it's a beautiful name, but it's not your only name. And so during that journey, I really felt like in the NICU, and then subsequently that I just felt alone being a mom, even though everyone has the same name in this community, I still felt alone. And so I really felt empowered to write more about that and to start this community and to start this podcast and to write my book for it, which I think that should be coming out in about 6 months or so from now. So if you haven't subscribed to my email list, I would love it if you do so, because then I can give you updates on the book and all of that information. I'm hoping to get it out before the end of the year, in particular because I'm turning 40 in a few weeks. And I feel like this past decade in my 30s, which is essentially when I became a mom, has flown by. And I was saying earlier, I put a picture of me with a bowl of M&Ms. Oh gosh, what just happened? I don't know. Hold on. What happened to my screen? Okay, I'm not sure what just happened. Uh, Send a message if you don't hear me right now. Hopefully you can still hear me. Anyway, I was gonna, oh great, thank you, Gigi. So I was gonna put a picture. I think if you scroll all the way up to the top of the chat, you'll see the picture of me holding a bowl of M&Ms. And anyway, it has 3,652 M&Ms in there. And I like counted them all out. And this wasn't recently. I mean, I did this last year for a reel. It was a reel that took a real long time to prepare, but I actually really liked the visual because M&Ms or candies are in different colors, and we can have red days, blue days, yellow, green days. But really, they're all the same though. I mean, like, yes, they may be different colors, but it's still a day in your life. And how can we savor these days? Because really, that decade, that this motherhood decade I've been on, it goes so fast. And you all know time just goes so fast. So how can I capture time more? Um, and what I learned also with writing is when I wrote, I was more mindful. I was more in the present, and I was able to live my verb more. Now, mother, going back to that whole mom versus mom is a noun or a title that everyone was calling me versus mom is a verb. I looked up in the dictionary the title versus the verb, which has evolved over time. Apparently, to mother wasn't a word. I don't know at what point it changed, but like in the turn of the 20th century, it was just a noun. But as time has gone on, it has become like a verb and an adjective. Regardless, we don't need grammar lessons, but I do think that the definition of to mom, meaning to give birth, to rise, to care for, protect, I think that is so profound if you really think about it, because what gives birth, what allows oneself to rise, care, or for protect is love. Like love does all of those things. And I felt like for the first time after reading that, um, that I truly could have control over something because I did not have control over much. I'm getting emotional thinking about like just how lack of control I had in the beginning. But what I could control was how I loved in the moment. And so despite kind of all the chaos, I was able to keep moving forward with that. And really, so many times I feel like in life we can get bogged down with what do we do next? But it is moving forward in love or in fear. And fear may be frustration or anxiety. And I had a whole lot of that at the beginning, and I still do sometimes. And I very much felt, I guess, called to, as a healthcare provider, educate, not even educate, because I'm not educating, I'm educating myself as I'm going, I guess, but to be an expert and not being an expert, to embrace motherhood and all of its, um, just in all of its ups and downs. And I knew that there's all these experts and how do you do this with parenting, how do you do X, Y, and Z, but how about just being like and being enough, and you are enough, and you can talk positive to yourself, like we were saying earlier at the beginning, the 5-to-1 ratio. Like Dr. John Gottman is a marriage researcher that talks about with relationships, 5 positives to 1 negative they thrive on. And that relationship is with yourself. Like that also can apply to yourself. So if you have 1 negative, trying to counteract that with 5 positives. And gosh, thank you so much for all those comments in the chat. I really appreciate you guys. I feel like that is something that really I needed to work on, of this 5-to-1, because the negatives are what I would tell myself so much, and what this title mom, I feel like, was this well, you're not being an A+ mom right now. You're not doing this. You're not, but really you are, and I am. And it's hard for me to say I'm proud of myself. It's so hard. But when we can say that, I think that that creates neuroplasticity, that creates new pathways. And pride, you expand, and shame, you contract. So even if I don't feel it in the moment, how can I do that? So anyway, lots of words, a lot of me rambling. Yes, it's a new habit being formed for sure. And yes, fear is a liar. It really is. It is. And I think that's so true. So true. Um, I so going into kind of the steps of what I tried to figure out, like in my journey of, okay, well, I understand a bit how the brain works. The brain is so complex, but I do love it. And I really love learning about neuroplasticity. What are some steps that I can do to counteract this mom title, or this frustrated mom, or this infected mom that's passing this on, and do more of mom verb? So I looked at the brain, and I looked at how there is the primitive part of our brain, the amygdala, which is an almond, like it literally comes from the word almond. Um, and so this little almond, which sometimes on my talks, like I'll just bring chocolate covered almonds because number one, they're good, but also just to remember, it's like this size, but it is probably smaller than that. But it's so powerful, and all animals share it. It's our survival tool. It helps us to escape danger. And really, as humans, as animals, as reptiles, that is our body's goal. And so the amygdala is incredibly powerful, but also incredibly primitive. And it will alarm whenever it is told to alarm. And it is the fastest, or one of the fastest pathways in our brain, because it's a survival thing. So if you think about, like, if you're driving and a car tries to get into your lane, you slam on the brakes without thinking about it. Like, that's thanks to our amygdala. Our heart rate increases, our blood pressure increases. It's that sympathetic nervous system, or that fight, flight, or freeze. And it's up to our prefrontal cortex, which is this part of our brain that is more human. Not all animals share that. Okay. We can think logically with that. We can say, oh, this is a false alarm, but it is a slower pathway in our brain because it's not as helpful for survival. So we have highways essentially to the amygdala, to and from the amygdala, but back roads to the prefrontal cortex and to logical thought. So how can I strengthen my back roads, and as opposed to taking highways? Now, sometimes I'm so thankful my amygdala works so well in instances where it needs to work. But so many times, remember, it's primitive. It will alarm with anything that is a concern in the body. So that is real versus imagined. So kind of like a tornado siren. There's a test tornado siren, and there's a real tornado. And they both sound the same, or at least in the Chicagoland area, they both sound the same, the test tornado and the real tornado siren. So the response is the same: my elevated heart rate, my blood pressure, me focusing on just one thing, getting frustrated, getting anxious, literally trying to fight, flight, or freeze. And like we were saying earlier, like feeling it in the body. Like I feel sometimes like I want to fight, or I feel sometimes like I want to run. And that all is from this powerful almond that is reacting to what it thinks is a real safety concern. But so many times, especially in modern society, we are typically safe in the moment. Like when we're running late, we are not, it's not a life or death situation usually. Like if my kids are going to get to school on time, like we were saying earlier, like it's just, it's something that I can get frustrated at. And my amygdala thinks that it's the same thing as me getting into a car accident, or even, like, to be more primitive, really, actually, is like a bee in the car, because the amygdala is so primitive, it doesn't understand that really the dangers of a car as much as like a bee in the car, which I thought was interesting. One time that happened where I was just trying to drive and I couldn't, because there's this ridiculous bee in the car. And then I was like, amygdala, distracted driving's worse than a bee. Okay. But my amygdala didn't listen. So I had to like pull the car over and like get my prefrontal cortex back in the game and all of that. But anyway, where was I going at with that? I don't know, but I got all thinking about my bee in the car. But anyway, it's just, Montaigne says that my life has been full of many misfortunes, most of which have never happened. So the more we can essentially create back roads from that amygdala, sometimes we can't help the amygdala alarming. We just can't. And that's normal. It's a normal response to a stressor. But we can turn the amygdala off, though. We have that power. And it may take a little bit of time because we literally have stress hormones circulating through the body. Like that is a physiological response. It's a normal response to feel frustrated, to feel anxious. But you can recognize that over time and with practice that this is a false alarm and maybe I'll just give it a few minutes. So taking these back roads and I've kind of dubbed a couple back roads that I like to work on, and there can be really anything that can help you recognize that it's a false alarm. But excuse me, but for me, gratitude helps. Being thankful for the fact that my kids still want to show me these things instead of getting to school on time. Like, isn't that cool that like my son built this Lego thing right now and he wants to show me it? Like, that's amazing. Like, we're going to be totally late, but that's really cool because someday he's not going to want to show me, excuse me, sorry. He's not going to want to show me these things. Because, he'll be too cool. Anyway, but maybe someday he won't be too cool. But I'm fully expecting at some point they're not going to want me to tell them good night. They're not going to want to do these things. So let me be grateful in the moment. Like if they just keep wanting me to go in their room or whatever it is, So that helps. Also compassion, like I was saying, that 5-to-1 ratio. And earlier today, I had everyone when I was like super nervous. I was probably rambling a bit, but I had you guys or who is listening do a list out literally like write it down or on your computer or in your mind. Think of 5 positives to counteract 1 negative. And I encourage you to actually do that. So take the time right now to do that, right after the session to do it, or before you go to bed, or put a reminder in your phone, because the more you can practice that, the more you can truly cultivate self-love and self-care. And essentially, I think for me at least, treat that infection, that original infection that I was infected with that I didn't even know I had. And I think, and it may be different for you, whatever you struggle with, whatever your whatever your mental highways are. And we can't be perfect. Like perfection is not what I strive to attain anymore because I wouldn't want a perfect mom. Like life isn't perfect. Yes, perfection is a myth. It so is. Yes, Gigi. Like it's a myth. And it is the lowest standard for ourselves because it's unattainable. And life isn't perfect. Nature isn't perfect. I love the example. I say it all the time, but I love it so much of fall and the yellows and the oranges in the trees. That color is in the leaves all along. Yellows and oranges are in the tree, in the leaves, but it's chlorophyll that's masking it during the warmer months and with sunlight because it's producing, food for the tree that green, and it's green because of that. But decreased light, decreased warmth is what brings out those inner colors. And the fall is just so beautiful. The fall is beautiful. And we stop and look at those beautiful colors. And it's truly from decreased light and warmth. And I think that's just so amazing. So it truly is like this balance in life of, not every day is going to be a perfect day. It's not like my perfect day. It may not be the same as your perfect day. It probably isn't because I am a total history dork and I love just looking up history things. And I don't think many people enjoy that. If you do, you need to talk with me afterwards because I'd love to have a good history chat. But anyway, that would be part of my perfect day. And maybe yours is different. And whatever that is, so what is perfection essentially? And I mean, I can go into specifics of, I think sunflowers have a perfect symmetry of something with seeds. But even then, those perfect flowers, they need to turn towards the sun. They won't survive without light, without, nourishment, without trusting in the process. Like when I plant my seeds, I have to trust that they will grow, and I have to let go of that control. And if I'm perfectly trying to arrange the soil, trying to plant more seeds, trying to do whatever that is, then that kind of disrupts the natural process. Yes, we aren't constantly digging up to see. Yeah, it's so true that so much of life is not control. Trying to remember, there's a couple quotes I have, but just really there are so many about decreasing control, relinquishing control. Another back road. So gratitude, compassion, mindfulness, which all of this is kind of mindfulness, right? I mean, like looking at nature, looking outside of oneself, being in awe. Uh, I think that when I keep using this running late, for example, because because we were tardy the other day. So that's why I keep using this, because I'm so annoyed that I think we've been tardy 4 times now. And I'm not sure at what point in time I get in trouble, but yeah. Anyway, so running late as usual. And so how can I be mindful, which is similar, I guess, to gratitude? But I wrote about it recently. I wasn't thinking about it in the moment, because in the moment my amygdala was firing. It thought we were in danger. We weren't. But later on, I thought, how neat is it that we frequently go on the car line, that we have this community, the school community, that like these people that we pull up to every day are smiling at us to get out. And we have the same, teachers that are greeting my kids, that love my kids. And that's just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing that we have this community. And so that's just kind of like an example of mindfulness that I can think about. Because, and the reason why I thought about that was, I think I can, for the most part, drive okay, but I don't know. One day I was just, I don't know, it was a mess. Maybe I had a podcast record, something that I had to get to, drop the kids off. And I'm like, I don't know, that somehow one of my kids like did something where my car bumped accidentally into the next car in front of me. And everyone was fine. It was fine. It was right in front of the school. All the teachers and the teachers were like, kids, get out, because this mom needs a moment. I did. I needed a moment. And the mom that was in the other car, she got out, and I was full on expecting her to be so mad. And then the car was fine, but she smiled at me. She was like, "Are you okay? Like, you're having a rough morning, mom." And I was like, "Yes, I am. I'm having a rough morning." She was so awesome. She was so awesome. And I so I wrote about that afterwards. I'm like, isn't that beautiful that like it's okay. Like we all have these moments, we all have these mornings, but we have each other where we can remind ourselves of these smiles, of this community that we have, and lift each other up. So I now that was a silver lining. And now the teachers would be like, is that the mom that does podcasts for moms and writes for moms? But you know what? I'm truly embracing imperfection there, right? But I think that is, yes, I did give myself some great, yes, thank you. And not at first, not at first. I did not, I had a good cry for like 20 minutes at least. But it was also like, I loved that mom for smiling at me. She was amazing. And yeah, that release is needed sometimes. Very true. So I just encourage you guys, like, life is hard. Life is hard. Um, but it's also beautiful. And there's ups and downs, and and ease and difficulty. I feel like ease can be overrated, and hard being hard or difficult is underrated, where we want such ease. Well, my history thing again. Yes, it's a beautiful mess. Yep. And with my love of history, I have a bunch of magazines and like just from I guess now like 150 years on. I mean, not that many, but I do have some where I could see, I think it's so fascinating to see the evolution of how we have kind of come to embrace, gosh, you guys, like I just completely lost that thought. I got on a history tangent. If someone can remind me what I said, I don't know. I was going to say something about history. But anyway, just again, life is a beautiful mess. We were talking about life and we need that release. And it is. So again, embracing imperfection, because I don't know what I was about to say there. But it is so helpful for us moms to be together, to be able to support each other. And I love it. I love every minute of, oh, that's what it was. I'm turning 40. So here's my little thoughts that came back. So ease and difficulty. Ease was so important in the magazines like after about like the 1920s. And how can life be easier? How can we have like whatever it is with the newest appliance, the newest thing, refrigerators? Look how amazing this is, which is incredible. It is incredible, the advances in society. But if you look back into like the 1890s, like those writings, it talks about hard work, and it talks about how we learn, how we grow with hard work. And not to say that there weren't issues back then, there were plenty of issues, but I think that's something that we somehow lost over the last 100, 150 years of we want ease, but we forget how difficulty makes us stronger sometimes. And we don't want it and we try to shy away from it. But I think sometimes it's embracing and leaning into that where we grow. And yes, thank you, Gigi. Yes, it's so I think it's time for us to embrace that more, embrace simplicity in life. I want my life to be more simple, and simple sometimes is not easy. It is so many times hard, but it's beautiful to be able to spend time with our kids, regardless of if we are what we're doing. And just embracing this beautiful fleeting moment for what it is. And I so very much appreciate every single one of you guys for listening in, for being part of this community, for your support and for your love. Because remember, you are enough. I am so proud of every single one of you. You are doing incredible things and you are amazing. So, with that in mind, well, first I'll put my link here. I'll put my link. I have my link there. I think I put it in there earlier. But if you want to check out my information, I would love it if you join. And again, feel free to subscribe to my newsletter. I would love that too, because then you can get updates on my book. And y'all are amazing. So with that in mind, I am going to turn the floor to these incredible people that have an incredible podcast, G-Rex and Dirty Skittles. And so let me get that. Oh, there's G-Rex. Hey, Gretchen.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can. How are you?
I'm good. Talking about perfect mess, right? So
Yeah.
I completely forgot that we were doing this today, and I also completely forgot that we were seeing Wanda Sykes tonight, a couple hours from the house. So I had to bring
Oh,
my entire operation with me to the hotel.
oh
So
my gosh.
I'm
Well,
in
thank
a
you.
Fairfield Inn in Rochester, New York. So it's all good.
Thank you for making the time to do that. And thank you for the Fairfield Inn for supporting this and your equipment for making this happen. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was awesome. You know what? We make good time coming up here too.
Oh,
I
good.
left I left work at 1. I'm like, I gotta go.
Yeah. So who are you seeing tonight?
Wanda Sykes.
Wanda Site. Okay. Should I know? I probably should know who this is. My brother says I'm really bad with knowing names.
Yeah,
Is-
maybe YouTuber later on.
okay, I will. I will.
Maybe not around the kids.
Okay. That's good to know.
Well, she's an amazing comedian. She is
Okay.
so funny, so irreverent. She is the very best. You can catch if you have Netflix, you can catch her special on Netflix too.
Oh, nice. Oh, okay. So she's everywhere. Okay, cool. I will check her out. Well, have fun. That'll be awesome.
So, Dirty Skittles is on her way.
Okay.
I told her where to go. Hold, please. Hold.
Yes. Hold. Okay. And while we're waiting, I'm going to introduce uh G-Rex and Dirty Skittles because they have an incredible podcast. And their podcast is called Shit, and it's spelled SH exclamation mark T. That goes on in our heads, which I thought was like the best name. When I first discovered their podcast, I was like, this is the coolest name ever. And I need to talk to these people. And so we both kind of like reached out together and we were able to be on each other's shows. And I have such a blast every time I talk to you guys. You're incredible. And we talked about all sorts of things. We talked about things that I didn't know I was going to ever talk about on a podcast.
Well, because we're reverent, okay? And we're not professionals. We are far from professionals. But, we started the podcast because of my own mental health breakdown, right? And
Yes.
never in a million years did we think that people would listen to us. We thought it'd be like 100 people and be done. But, we've had a little over 300,000 downloads since
Incredible.
we went live in February of 2020.